my approach is rather different to, it's more similar to Virginia's actually than to the approach prescribed by Killian in the setting up of the. I'm not against the EU AI Act. I just think there's a lot more pragmatic things we need to do. And I tend to be working at the pragmatic level. My credentials, in case you don't know me, are in AI, because I'm a computer scientist and mathematician by background, and I've done a lot of work on the web and the internet and governance of the internet. I did the AI review for Theresa May in 2017, and from that the UK's EU. That was the year of the Brexit vote, of course, and from that came the UK's EU AI strategy, and the Office for AI and the AI Council, which has now morphed into a much bigger AI policy unit, and the AI Safety Institute. Not down to me, that was down to Rishi Sunak more. But and that then with Virginia, I was on the UN High Level Advisory Board for AI in 24, and we released our recommendations that were accepted by the UN General Assembly in September 24. Only a year ago, it seems like forever. And then they're now being implemented. I can talk a little bit more about those. But I'm actually, so that's what I want to um, make a key point about here. And while I'm going to go into the current state of play, I think, first, and the geopolitics, and then talk about what I'm personally focusing on. And that is, you talk about global, but you never include China. And it's just with obviously with climate change, I don't believe you can talk about global AI ethics, responsible AI, global AI policies without including China. So that's why one of the reasons why I was keen to join the UN HLAB, because the General Assembly does, for all its flaws and weaknesses and lack of money at the moment and lack of support from the US, it does convene from across the world, all the countries that sit there at the General Assembly. And they all voted for, nobody used their veto to veto against the recommendations that were our recommendations for AI global governance, that came from our report. Nobody vetoed them, including the US and including China. China, in fact, have recently, there was a flip this year in geopolitics, in that I suppose the axis is around the EUA Act, as Killian said, is relatively stable, but it's getting some pushback. You've got to simplify. You have to simplify it. How are people going to understand what this means to them? And then the axis, I hesitate to use the term axis of evil, but we've now switched to a point where we have the leader of the free world saying absolutely no regulation. We're going to win this war, this race, whatever you want to call it, come hell or high water. Doesn't matter what damage it does to society, to people. It's all about investment in our tech companies and beating the Chinese. And then the Chinese in Shanghai in July, end of July, announced their policy, which was all about, we're going open, we're being transparent, we're supporting the UN, we want to talk global AI governance. Now, I know I go to China a lot. I know the Chinese play a very, very long game in this, and I'm not pretending that we trust everything they say, but I think they're as worried about the potential wipeout of the human race by AI as we are, right? They don't want to see that any more than we want to blow each other up with nuclear bombs. Talking more here with the Russians, of course, but I think that the Chinese are very much ahead in terms of regulation and talking about um, the governance of AI globally. They, of course, are a surveillance state. They have very different values to us in terms of human rights. And then this is another point, that how can we talk about global values when our value systems are so different? I go to India a lot and I go to the Gulf a lot. And the Gulf, of course, the values there are driven very much by the religion. And that's another whole game one has to play in this world because the values are very different and they are very much behind the development of the LLMs in the Gulf. There's a lot going on there and a lot of money going in. And I really don't think we can sort of put our blinkers on and say, this is what we're doing in Europe without thinking about what's going on in the rest of the world. And my big, big worry in all this is that we are living in a very completely unregulated and ungoverned world in AI with what appears to be a hell for leather approach to being the fastest, the biggest, the best, without regard to how that technology works, how flawed it is, how right or wrong it is with its answers. And I believe we have to, all of us, including Europe in a big way, because Europe's a big player in this, put pressure upwards to get the world leaders to really take this seriously. And the two major things the UN are beginning to implement. They have their new Office for AI, which comes under the Office for Digital and Emerging Technologies that Amandeep Gill runs. The two things they're pushing on are the Global Scientific Council, or panel, I think they call it. They put out a call for membership for that. Who knows who's going to be on it and how it's going to operate, but that's happening to collect reports on various aspects of AI. One of them will be the UK safety report, but there will be lots of others as well. And the global dialogue, which will be much more about diplomats and nation states talking to each other. I believe that's going to be launched at the AI for Good conference in Geneva in July. I think it is, the dates change, but anyway, it's that's run by the ITU, which of course is an agency of the UN. And I think that's where they're planning to launch that initiative as to how will the global dialogue be set up, who will be represented on it, how will it be managed. And I believe that, so I think we need that top down. We have to, I don't see any other player who can convene across the whole world and get people to at least come to meetings to talk about this stuff. I also then believe in grassroots activity. And this is where I worry about the EU approach because it takes an awful lot of understanding to understand the EU AI Act and anything else about it. I'm working very much at grassroots level in schools, in universities, in the civic, right? We have a project called Making Southampton an AI City of Excellence, where we want to make AI education or AI advice available to anybody in the city to come and find out what it is. Because most people, including very influential journalists, really have no understanding about this technology. I mean, we're in the middle of a crash. We don't know what the fallout's going to be economically, but the companies were overhyped, overvalued. There's a crash in terms of the stock market. We don't know, as I say, how wide that's going to go or what the impact will be or which companies will go under, which will be the winners and losers at the end of this. It's playing out in front of us. The media talk about that all the time. They talk about loss of jobs, and people are scared that their jobs are going, even though, as I hear everything that Virginia said, wonderful talk she gave us there about how it is about us. It's about society taking control of this situation. Many companies are hiding behind AI. They say we're going to get rid of a lot of workers because we're going to replace them by AI. They don't know how to do that. They don't know what the productivity gains will be. They don't know how to do that reliably. They haven't got enough money. So it's very hard to pull apart, which is what the truth is in this area. And history will tell us, actually, we are steering through a big moment in history. And I like to remind myself of that. What are people going to say in 100 years, 50 years' time, if we're all still around, or if the human race is still around, about what we did today or didn't do? I was just listening to the Reith lectures on Radio 4, and the lecturer was talking about the abolition of slavery and gave a history of the abolition of slavery. A story I did not know about the years and years and years of grassroots pressure, as well as top-down pressure from governments before that happened. And we're in that sort of similar type. I mean, so we really, really, really have to get control of the AI development so that we can make it work for us and not against us, and not be in danger of the risks. So education is, I think it's fundamental that everyone can understand. I mean, we're going to go into a world where, because Gen AI has plateaued, scaling isn't working, and everyone's talking about we're going neurosymbolic. I understand what that means. How many, how many people around the world will understand what that means, right? And when somebody says, we're using AI for this, that, and the other project, do they mean they're using Gen AI or they're using image processing, which has been around a long time, which we still don't govern properly? Now, I'm probably running out of time. How much have I got, Robert? Yeah. So the things I said I was focusing on schools and universities in particular. To make sure that we're going to roll out a program so that every student at Southampton understands what AI is and how to apply it in their subject area and think about their career going forward. I One of the things a mantra I've had for a long time is if it's not diverse, it's not ethical. And I don't just mean gender diversity, but that is a big issue here. Everybody has to be involved, not just the tech bro types in telling us what we must and mustn't do. And this plays into what Virginia was saying, is but it's got to be for society. And so everybody in society, we've got to help them understand it. The point Virginia made, I'm going to pick it up also, because I would ask the question, is AGI ethical? Now, the tech bros will happily talk about we're going to be at AGI next year. They don't define what it means, and they never talk about whether that's an ethical thing to do. Do we want a society that's got these incredibly intelligent machines in that can outsmart us? Is that what we want? Do we want the Elon Musk society that says nobody has to work? What does that mean? Right? Is that so? I think we have to discuss these things at a human from a human perspective. And I'm going to finish. I could say a lot of other things, but I'm going to finish by saying that my biggest worry at the moment is that what Gary Marcus calls the inshitification of the internet, which is to me destroying the integrity of the internet. That's what we're talking about. Because every time someone does a search with a generative AI, comes up with an answer that they don't know whether it's right or wrong, they just accept it if it's not their world. And then they put that back on the internet in a blog or some sort of social media post. And it's there then to be training the next generation. There's an awful lot of rubbish going out on the internet being used to train the next generation of models. And I think the internet's going to become a swamp of misinformation. And that's one of my major worries at the moment that we have to grasp. I think I'll leave it there.
Well, that's great. And I think I'll let Killian respond during the later discussion, but I think that the multilateral global aspect is still part also of what we all like to think of as the values of the continent of Europe. So I don't see any over against problem. I think it's a question of layers, as you say, Wendy, at the village, at the town, in the university, and all the way up to the UN global layer.
Absolutely.
You need strong institutions, as Virginia also was saying.
Yeah.
And I think the European institutions do their bit in producing the strongest governance that politics will allow in Europe and in sharing it with other actors. And one of the things we are not going to find easy to do under Trump too, if I may put it so bluntly, is to find an effective governance mechanism. And maybe the conference under the ITU auspices will enable a certain amount of information sharing, but it's not Interpol. And I think that. So when we need Interpol for AI, we won't have it yet, but we're getting there. So thank you very much. And I'd now like to turn